Following program is produced by Project Bait and does not reflect the views of this station.
This is another Project Bait News Analysis. I'm Ron Scott with Dave Rambeau, and we're going to take a look at something that a lot of people have already seen. In fact, it's one of the highest grossing films in the history of motion pictures here in the United States, Avatar. Dave Rambeau has an interesting look at it from an Afro-Centric perspective as to what this film means. Dave?
You know, I study daily newspapers on a regular basis in order to prepare for these interviews, and one of them I was looking at was the New York Times, and they had one of the white editorial writers, Brooks, really a middle-of-the-road conservative, and he wrote a column, and the headline, and obviously caught my attention, is called "The White Messiah," and he was speaking about this film, and he gave a long discussion about how this was an example, a contemporary example of the white messiah who comes and saves the natives, and in the meanwhile boinks the best-looking native woman in the tribe, and all the natives look up to him and can't figure out how to save the world, and even though they are environmentally conscious and soulful and spiritual and all that, but that this dude comes and they train him, and then he leads them and saves the world. So what we have here is just 2010 version of all the audiovisual symbolism that the white power structure has put on us with regard to white supremacy. And this goes back to the days of the 70s when Dr. Frances Cress Welsing put out her book, The ISIS Papers, which talked about white supremacy and how white supremacy was the ideology that the white power structure uses, constantly, obviously in this case, renews, to keep control of people of color throughout the world who make up 3/4 or more of the populace of this planet.
This film, Dave, has grossed, as I said in the open, millions of dollars. It took like maybe $300 million to produce, and it's grossed over $400 million. I mean, what does this really mean? Does this mean that people really don't understand what's happening, or they buy this?
Probably a combination of both. Certainly the white populace, and Welsing gets into this throughout her book, is that that symbols are used to convince and control, and that the best method for control is not to use force on a relentless basis, because force can only go so far, as we see in the wars, for example, in Iraq and in Afghanistan. Force can only go so far. So what you really want to do is convince the person you want to oppress that they are inferior. And part of that is to hold yourself up as superior, intellectually, spiritually, morally, physically. And so the United States and the powers have constantly done that. And it is done in art as well as sport, and also, for example, in education. In fact, throughout every facet of a white supremacist society, whether it's here, for example, in the United States, or in Europe, or in Brazil. And we see it, because this is football season, we clearly see it in terms of sports, because as you know, throughout the history of the professional football league, blacks were supposedly not smart enough to coach and not smart enough to be quarterback. And so it is just within the last couple of years that we've had a black coach who has gone to the Super Bowl with his team, and in fact won, Tony Dungy, for example. And then you know the myth of the white quarterback, because black quarterbacks weren't smart enough to run a professional football team. So that whenever a black college quarterback came out, they always moved him from quarterback to wide receiver. until, you know, pretty soon some of them refused, and gradually we began to get black quarterbacks. Still in all, the announcers always tout white quarterbacks as being the greatest, and look at black quarterbacks who lead their teams to victory as an anomaly. Okay, so then we see white supremacy preached, and in this particular movie, interestingly enough, they're taking it into special effects in the third dimension, and this is 2010, and so they're still preaching the same game, and it is still being dumped on us, and we are still being prey and dupes to it.
And it's interesting about this film, one of the things, Dave, just briefly, is that people get an avatar body, and in one case, one of the guys who gets the body, who goes to save the folks, is a military guy. So it's really interesting in terms of the symbolism, as you say.
Constantly throughout, and we see this throughout history, whether it's Dr. Schweitzer, Albert Schweitzer in Africa, or Lawrence of Arabia, or Tarzan of the Apes, or the Lone Ranger, the Green Hornet, and we see it still in the use of the title, the Washington Redskins, instead of as they actually are, the Washington Blackskins or the Washington Whiteskins. So that it's something that's going on, and we should, obviously, in our consciousness, and because we use symbols here, clearly, we should call our audience's attention to this fact.
This has been another Project Bait news analysis, and well, in this particular case, a sort of news / Afro-Centric cultural analysis, and taking a look at Avatar. So when you see it, then think about what we said here today. Want to find out more about what we talked about on this interview? Find it on our website at projectbait.blackgold.net. Projectbait.blackgold.net, and thank you for watching again.
Hi, I'm here from All Home Improvement to solve your repair needs. For an estimate, call area code 313-896-3603. Again, area code 313-896-3603.
Read the latest edition of Urban Journeys, We Ride the Bus, on projectbait.blackgold.net. That's Urban Journeys on projectbait.blackgold.net.
The preceding program was produced by Project Bait and does not reflect the views of this station.